So as a writer and as a historian who was trying to get a handle on that massive unfree movement and its consequences, I was inspired, first of all, by the novelist Ralph Ellison. He described American history. This is in an essay. This is not in his novel Invisible Man, which you've probably heard of, or perhaps have read. He described it as a vast drama being played out on the body of a Negro giant, to use his terms. He was writing in the 1950s. Ellison's metaphor seemed to describe the experiences of people like Charles Ball. Tied up like Gulliver, the body made up of all the enslaved bodies that were being bought and marched and exploited in the sources I was reading, the plantation ledgers, slave traders' journals, newspapers full of slave sale ads, and so on. These were all, I came to believe, they were all part of a giant metaphorical body. And this one was stretched across the new states and territories and across the decades of rapid American expansion. And everything that enslavers like Hampton tried to do was an attempt to turn enslaved people's bodies, enslaved African-American bodies, against their own interests. So they measured Charles Ball's cotton-picking rate and demanded more, until he had to race left hand against right hand and turn all the resources of his mind from sunup to sundown to the effort of trying to meet the quota they had set upon him, the effort of trying to survive one more day with a hand strike back. And as I wrote, I saw that you could dramatize the image of the economic and other relationships which enslavers were creating in some ways as the literal parts of that metaphorical body. So I named chapters after some of these metaphorical parts. Feet for the chapter that covers the development of the slave trade, which marched people south and west, their feet moving against their wills, away from everything they know and everything that gave them strength and love. Right hand and left hand for the way that enslaved African-Americans' creative abilities at work were extracted from and turned against them. Seed for the way that entrepreneurs figured out how to tap world cotton markets and world credit markets with a financing that allowed them to buy ever-growing armies of enslaved migrants, forced from Virginia, Maryland, and the Carolinas to the new states like Louisiana and Alabama and Mississippi. And backs for the way that by the 1830s the system, the great big interlinked and growing body of innovations and relationships, was building the wealth of Wade Hampton on the backs of enslaved people, and indeed the wealth not just of the cotton states, but of the other states as well. Still, it was true that whites in the cotton states were on average far wealthier than those in the rest of the United States, and the health of all Western countries' economies depended to no small extent on the price of cotton. But what about the second body? I mentioned that in a sense there were two bodies within this story. Well, this one is the body of African America itself, a culture and an identity formed in reaction to the creation of the body exploited by the corporate relationships created by enslavers and financiers and politicians and factory owners and consumers. What about that body? How should we think about that body? If we're thinking about the first one as a sort of Gulliver body Ralph Ellison talked about, and a body that's exploited and turned against itself, what should we think in essence about what African Americans thought of themselves and their own relationships to each other?
I don't consider myself beautiful, and therefore I feel that if I thought the Miss America pageant were just a beauty pageant, that I wouldn't be able to take part in it. Oh, I was asked at an interview if I thought I was beautiful, and I said, no, I don't. And they said, well, then do you think that the judges and interviewers and people that meet you that tell you you're beautiful are hypocrites then? And just for myself, being able to take part in the Miss America pageant and be myself, I cannot accept the fact that I am beautiful. I really don't believe I am.
Arawak, Haiti. From Arawak, Haiti, land of mountains, and probably originally the name of the whole island, Arawak. Arawakan language group formerly widespread in the West Indies and South America, 1910, from the self-designation of the Arawak people on the continental South America. And that's what I wanted to bring in the Tainos. So Arawakan language group formerly widespread in the West Indies and South America. 1910, from the self-designation of the Arawak people of the continental South America, they were identical with or closely related to the natives whom Columbus encountered on the islands, who were historically called Taino. Taino, an indigenous people of the Caribbean at the time of Columbus. From Taino, Arawakan, Niteno, the first, the good, also the name of their language. Arawak dance. Look how they hide the truth within the lie. What you don't know can't hurt your ass. Now what tripped me out is these Arawak dancers are the proper color that they should be. But you notice how society paints the picture of the traditional Indian as being Asian, that Mongolian look. But this is our history right here, people. Some of our history, since we know that there were many different tribes of indigenous people here in the Americas.